Good evening and welcome to the Brockton School Committee Policy Subcommittee meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 11th. Time is 5:30. We are located at the Dr. William Arnone Theater on 135 Belmont Street in the wonderful city of Brockton. I will call this meeting to order by establishing a quorum. Mrs. Sullivan? Mr. Vega? Here. Ms. Oliver?
Here.
Ms. Azak?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
And the superintendent, Dr. Tiliani, is present, and myself, Tony, as the chair, and Mr. Gomes is unavailable to attend this evening. Tonight's subcommittee policy is the discussion and potential vote on a competency determination policy for 2025 high school graduates, and I will hand the floor over to the superintendent.
Good evening, everyone. So as you know, sorry, is this very loud? So as you know, we have some recent changes to our MCAS this past year as a result of the election. And so now we can no longer utilize the MCAS to provide proof of competency for students to graduate. So all districts have been charged with providing new requirements, and we have to do this in a couple of different ways. We have to do it for this year's seniors, we have to do it retrospectively, and then we have to figure out the system moving forward. So at this time, I'd like to invite up Deputy Superintendent Sharon Wolder, who is going to talk you through the MCAS competency determination for the Brockton Public Schools that was drafted in collaboration with all of our high school leaders.
Okay, is it on? It is on. Good evening. I guess it definitely is on. That was very loud.
Do you use a PowerPoint?
No, I didn't bring a PowerPoint.
Okay. Right.
It's in draft
I just
form.
didn't want to be in your phone.
Nope, you're fine right where you are. Because it's in draft form and until it is voted on, we wanted to leave it just not as a presentation in case you have some changes that we are required to make. We don't want it up there for the public to think that's it. So we left it in draft form for that reason. As Dr. Tiliani said, that when the vote happened in November, it changed things instantly for students who are graduating from high school. For students who had already passed MCAS, they had already met competency determination, and therefore nothing changes for them. For the students who had not passed MCAS at that point, though MCAS is still required for accountability, it does not determine whether or not a student gets a diploma. So I want to make that really clear, because as we are preparing to administer MCAS, people might have questions as to why are we doing that. It is still part of accountability for schools and school districts. It does not determine whether or not a student has met competency determination for graduation. That is our responsibility to determine. And so the policy that was sent to you last week pretty much outlines what it is that we're required to do. According to the competency determination requirements from 1993, when all of this began, there are areas that we have to say that our students are meeting some level of competency that was determined by the state and is now determined by us, and that was in mathematics, English language arts, and in science. And so when we started to put the policy together for what we are looking for this school year, knowing that we are talking about students who are going to graduate in a couple of months and being realistic and reasonable about what our expectations are, we wanted to make sure that what we were expecting is pretty much what was being tested. And remember, they take the test as a sophomore, so it's really looking for competency those first 2 years of high school. And so with the mathematics, looking at what we offer, which is Math 1 and 2. Also, in many places, you'll see it as Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. We have it identified for our students as Math 1 and 2. For English language arts, they would meet the standards of 10th grade English language arts, which is what MCAS used to test. And for a science, that we have a lab science, which would be physics, biology, or chemistry, and so that they would have taken and completed a lab science. And so when we looked at what that would mean, and by we, I mean every principal of a high school, associate principal, We asked guidance and coordinators to be part of a committee that sat together to determine this, because as you know, we have Brockton High School and then we have our pathway schools. And so our pathways, their curriculum looks different, but what they would have to do in order to meet competency determination is also reflected in this document. And so when you go on to the second page, it just kind of lays it out. Full credit, we didn't want to put a grade or a percentage, but they passed the course and got full credit for 2 years of English, for 2 years of mathematics, for 1 lab science, and we did add U.S. history in here because U.S. history is required by law, and so adding that to the competency determination. And so then we went on to define what we meant. So the definition of high school level was making sure that we were meeting the standards by Massachusetts for high school level courses, that if it comes from outside of the state, if a student transfers in, that we would be looking at the courses that they were taking and that they were meeting that state's high school level courses. And if it was from out of the country, the same would apply. And so we try to make sure, especially for Edison Academy, we have a number of students who come from out of the country, and we do a lot of transcript verifications and analysis to determine. So we wanted to make sure that we were honoring what our students from other countries come with, what our students from other states come with, and that if a student left us at this point and had to graduate in another community, what we were expecting our students to leave with was very clear, and it would be that they had met competency determination, being making sure that they could meet the standards of 9th and 10th grade, ELA, the math courses, and a lab science, and beyond, because you also need to remember that this is just saying you've met that standard, but you also have to meet the graduation requirements, which is the number of credits and courses that you have to take at each school, in addition to meeting this. And so we wanted to make sure that that was laid out and equitable for all of our schools, that every student who is scheduled to graduate in June could meet that, or have an opportunity to recover those credits or accomplish that before their graduation in June, or in the case of Edison, in July. And we also put an appeals policy there. So if a student felt that they had met it and that they were not granted competency determination, that they could actually have it reviewed by a school administrator, a counselor, and a member of the central offices to make a decision, and once that decision was made, that would be final. We also wanted to make sure that any student from the past, because we are following the guidelines of DESE, any student from the past who had received a certificate of attainment and wanted to be reevaluated to see if they qualified for a diploma, that the standards of this year's students are what they would be assessed by. So if they graduated 3 years ago with a certificate of attainment, they would have to meet the standards outlined in this policy.
Thank you. I'll open up for questions to the members. If anybody has any questions. Representative Vega.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Walter. This is a very clear plan. When we talk about some of the assessment measures that are listed in here, right, like around classroom writing assignments and performance-based tasks in class, will teachers across disciplines be using a standard grading rubric for these assessments, so that there's equity in whether I'm in your class or I'm in Mr. Sullivan's class? Yeah.
So I would say at this point, for the students who we are assessing for graduation, it would be based on whether or not they passed the course, the way the course was designed. Okay. Moving forward, that could be something that absolutely could be a consideration, especially with the curriculum adoption that we presented to you a week or so ago, that would really lay out what the ELA curriculum included. With those come assessments that are embedded in that curriculum that would pretty much streamline things a little bit more than what we currently have.
Okay, thank you. And are there any, with this change, are there any potential implications for EL or SPED students?
So we actually had members from the Office of Special Education and from our bilingual office on the call with us to make sure our ESL courses were clearly covered with this policy, that our students with disabilities, in terms of students who are on the diploma track, this would not prevent them from being able to move forward with receiving that diploma, and all are in agreement that the way it is written is the way that it should be, so that those students have equitable access to the competency determination as well.
Thank you. And my last question, at the beginning you mentioned, and I think it's really important for families to hear, that while the MCAS is no longer a requirement for graduation, you mentioned that it is still an accountability measure for schools.
Yes.
What does that look like going forward? Like, how is a school accountable on the basis of MCAS performance?
So for all schools up until you get to 10th grade, it was always an accountability measure. And so from elementary, middle, taking MCAS was really to show what students, where they were at in terms of their academic growth based on that test, and where schools were at in terms of instruction and student achievement based on that test. And it was one of the measures that the Department of Education uses to determine our accountability status. The same was true for the high school. The only caveat was, and for students who were graduating, it also counted as a graduation requirement. So that piece is taken away, but the assessment as part of our accountability has not been taken away.
Thank you, and I appreciate the work you and the team put in.
Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan, followed by Ms. Oliver and Mr. Sullivan.
Presentation. I was wondering, if you compared this to the, excuse me, to the MCAS test, what's the difference?
So MCAS is one test. It's one test in each of those subject areas. It is taken over a couple of days for each test. It's supposed to measure how well students are meeting the standards of 9th and 10th grade courses primarily. And so what we don't have is the one test administered by the state. What it now requires is that within the schools, between their own unit assessments, projects, grades, daily grades, that the school is determining that our students are meeting those standards to the degree that we can say that they are competent in those standards.
Has this been sent in to DESE, or have they approved it?
So it's not up for DESE's approval. It does require that we make a decision. We will share our decision with DESE, but as many districts are doing and have already done, they have developed the policy for this year, knowing that as DESE has committees and other things looking forward to see what else they might have us do as districts for competency determination, that it's understood that this is probably a temporary policy, that as they start to develop new policies and procedures and things that they expect districts to do, this will change over time. So that is expected. At this point, the expectation is that we put something in writing that is clear and is given out to our families so that our students know what is required for them to get a diploma.
Just one final question. The seniors that are graduating this summer, do they know this already?
Once you decide that it is the policy, then we will make it part of what is communicated to them.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Oliver.
Good evening. Quick question. Hello? Oh, now it's loud. For students, the transfer students, what if they don't meet the requirements? What is the process that we're going to make sure they reach the requirements that we need them to make sure they don't stay back, that we don't hold them back?
So if someone transfers in and they haven't met the requirements for graduation, it would be the same as any other requirement. We have summer school, we have Edison Academy for evening classes. We have a number of students who transfer into this district who are older students who have who are years away or even courses away from graduation, which is why we have so many options for our students in Brockton, because we know that one pathway is not the only way for students to meet graduation. And so Edison has been really crucial to making sure that our students who come in and they're short credits or haven't met competency determination have access to an education that will get them a diploma.
Thank you. Do we know how many students past years received a certificate of attainment? Like, do we have numbers, how many we have to look into to get the process going for them?
So what we asked the Department of Education, school districts have asked that because we submit that. So each school would have its own numbers. Brockton High would have their numbers, Edison would have numbers, Champion would have numbers, and so we would have to do a deep dive back. What the Department of Education recommended was for now, what we should be doing is for students who ask. So if they reach out to the district and they ask to be considered, then we would do a transcript review for that student based on what they did while they were in school and compare it to this policy, because it would be a graduate of 2025. Not a graduate of the year they went to school, but a graduate of this year based on this competency determination.
That's good to know. How many years back are we going?
So this, the first class was the class of 2003.
Wow.
Yeah, and so quite a bit has changed
Yeah.
since then in terms of the courses that are required and even the credits required. So some things have changed since 2003, but it doesn't mean that if somebody from 2003 wanted their transcript reviewed, we would automatically say no. We would absolutely do a deep dive and find those transcripts and review those as well.
Perfect, that's good to know. Last question, are students in the SPED departments, when they graduate, are they getting diplomas or are they getting certificates?
So a student with an IEP depends on whether or not they're on a diploma track. If they're in separate classes and on the track for a certificate instead of a diploma, that matters. Their coursework matters. And so if you are in subset programming that has a different curriculum, you are most likely not on a diploma track, but on a track for a certificate, and that doesn't change. This does make it so that students who are on the track to receive a diploma that meet the course requirements and the credits, this policy would apply to them. Now, we do have students, especially at Brockton High School, where they are in sub-separate programming and they are looking to include them in general education courses. It doesn't mean they get modified coursework and have to do less or different. It means we have to accommodate them in a way that they can actually access the curriculum and have an opportunity to pass those courses. So there's some of that work in progress as well.
And for our students like severe disabled and not able to fulfill those fulfillments, basically to get the diploma, do we give them honorable diplomas?
They have
instead of
certificates of attainment, yes.
Okay. I know I've got a lot of complaints from parents, especially I know a lot of parents that have their kids on the SPED department that's very severe disabled, and they're not able to complete all the requirements to get a full diploma as they should, but I think those students also, we should, famous people always get the honorable PhD and masters. I think that's something that, I don't know if it's a state level or maybe more local, that we can look into, just give them an honorable diploma and just a certificate, because it's not by their choices, just basically disability that they were born with, unable to fulfill the requirement to complete, the whole 12 years of school. So I think that's something maybe we can look into. I think parents would feel much better about it, their kids getting a diploma, because they never thought their kid will be able to get a diploma. So that's something that we can always look into.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sullivan?
Thank you for the presentation. So students only have to earn past 2 years of English in high school, 2 years of math, 1 science course, and 1 U.S. history course, plus their other credits.
So I want to be very clear that would be competency determination, which is what MCAS tested.
Okay.
But to get a diploma, they would have to do that plus all of the other coursework required.
Mm-hmm.
the
I
full
don't want
credits.
people confused about that and think
Okay,
it's
'cause
just
it
two of
kinda
these,
looks
two of
like
these, and
that's
one
all
of
they have to
those. It
do.
is not that.
Yeah, yeah, okay, so thank you for clarifying. So each school district has to come up with one of these competency things, but no one's looking at what we're doing on it, or we don't have to pass it into the state or anything, or,
I think districts are sharing theirs because we got samples from other districts. I think Priya, Dr. Tahiliani can talk more about that. But ultimately, this is one of those times where a district does have the responsibility to make some decisions, and those decisions are expected to be quality decisions that make sure that our students are meeting a degree of expectation that is high, and not just saying that, we'll just hand out diplomas, but that we put some language behind it about expectations.
right, right. So, because I know, there was some students that are seniors that were concerned that contacted me on whether they're going to pass. But these were honor roll students, so I'm sure that this is not going to, they're still going to pass it and get their diploma, because they were in the high classes and everything,
And
so.
remember, if they've already passed MCAS, then they've already met
That's
competency
right, too,
determination.
because then this wouldn't apply to the seniors that
It would-
passed.
to anyone who has already passed, they've already met that.
That's right, okay. So, because you confused me at the beginning, you said something about the seniors, but that would be the future seniors.
And the seniors from this year, because remember, we have seniors who
Didn't pass
we
it.
would do appeals for that we can no longer do the
Yes.
appeals for. So
Okay, yeah.
it could be students from the class of 2025. But if they've already taken and passed MCAS, then they just need to complete their course requirements for graduation. If they have not, then we have to apply this policy.
So if they've already passed the MCAS in 10th grade, or the second time they took it, or
Yes.
third, then they're all set?
They're all
For the
set.
diploma, okay. Thank you for clarifying that, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Azak?
Thank you. So, quick question. Can you clarify a little bit as far as transferring? Because a lot of my colleagues have already touched base on some of my questions. But so if we have students that are transferring from a different district, do we have I just don't want any surprises for them and have them all of a sudden, you don't have what's required, what we're requiring. Do we have a checklist as far as before the transfer is complete to make sure those that are transferring, to avoid any confusion, things like that for them when they come into our district? Just to make sure that they have this checklist, this is what is required to get your diploma in Brockton.
So if a student is transferring to Brockton from another district within the state who also has to identify competency determination, then we would apply that competency determination to that student. So if they come in as a senior and they say, according to, let's say they came from Avon, they've met competency determination in Avon, we wouldn't then say, and now you have to meet ours too. We will honor that, just like we would honor if someone passed MCAS and came to us from another district, we will honor it the same. And so students coming in who have already met it, then we will honor what that district said was competency determination. If they come in as a freshman, then they need to meet ours.
No, thank you for clarifying. That was my question, is if they met it at one district, now they're coming into our district. So thank you for clarifying that.
Any follow-up questions? The only piece that I had is, I know we have our curriculum and we're going to take action on this, is knowing that financial literacy is a big topic. How do we integrate that into this policy? I know that's a different conversation. That's just, we can talk offline on that, but those are one of the things that I wanted to see, like, how can we move this forward? I know it takes time to plan that out, but I would like to see that rolled out.
So I would just say I have a lot of thoughts about financial literacy, and I think no student should graduate without being literate financially as well. That's life, right?
Yeah.
However, that's not what was tested, and so to not make it impossible for our almost graduates to graduate, to stick with what was already the expectation, I think is where we are now. But when we look at policy for graduation requirements moving forward. It's certainly something that is worth having a discussion about.
Appreciate that. No further questions. So if any members have any concerns what's in front of you this evening, any additions, deletions, or add to it, if everybody's comfortable, we can entertain a motion to on Ms.
On that
Azak,
motion,
on the-
before we clarify, before we do the motion, where in this does it state that we will accept if a transfer student, if they've already met the competency requirement at one district to come into ours? I apologize, I don't see it on here, so if I overlooked it, I just want to make sure if we're going to pass something that we have it correct.
So on the second page,
Oh, second?
you have the definition of high school level and then in-state students
Okay,
transferring into Brockton.
there we go. I see it right here.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Then that's all I needed on that motion.
All right, thank you. Mr. Sullivan?
I'll make the motion to approve as presented tonight.
Second.
Motion was made by Mr. Sullivan, properly seconded by Ms. Azak to approve the competency determination policy for 2025 high school graduates. A show of hands. Vote is unanimous. It passes. Do we have any other business?
Thank you.
Superintendent? Nothing? With that being said, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion was made by Mr. Sullivan to adjourn, properly seconded by Mr. Vega. Show of hands. Meeting adjourned.